Not Quite
Darkness
is a podcast that contains spoilers, opinions, and general. Listener discretion is advised.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to another episode of Not Quite Darkness. I'm Keith Brooks, and I'm here with my co-host Chad Dowdy. How you doing, Chad?
I'm doing doing good, Keith. And I gotta say, yeah, I'm doing Keith. I'm surprised. I'm really surprised that you wanted to record today. Because is it not a national holiday for you? Are you aware what today is?
What is today?
It's Nev Campbell's birthday.
Is it really? Oh my! I'm so sorry, Nev. My love. Oh my God. No wonder I fucking like her. She's born in spooky season. I'm also sure I blew out your eardrums.
No, you're fine. Listeners, maybe, but I'm fine.
Oh, she's so much better than Maniac. Oh my God. But that's not to spoil what this podcast is gonna be. But let's go ahead and tell the folks at home what we do. Chad had this brilliant idea of following the documentary In Search of Darkness and watching all of the horror movies from the 80s that they had listed. And Chad and me are not friends anymore based on that decision. And so this is our last movie of 1980 for the first part, which is insane. Because if this is where we are in the first documentary, what kind of scrape in the bottom of the barrel are we going to do for 1980?
Yeah, this is cream of the crop, right? Like, apparently, this is the cream of 1980.
This is somebody's cream, definitely. I think before we get started, we're going to dive into this movie. But let's say at time of recording, the WGA strike has resolved. SAG is still striking. We are not promoting this material. Definitely not promoting this film. We stand strong with the unions. And congratulations to the WGA.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so we're talking about 1980s Maniac, starring Rocky's boss from Rocky, and he's also in The Godfather. I forget who he plays. And yeah, Chad, tell me about this fucking piece of shit garbage movie. Ugh.
You know, a lot of times, I'll try to dress up or do something. Couldn't really swing what I had planned for this one, but luckily I had a fallback plan. And so because this movie is so incredible, this movie is cinema. So I'm wearing my Cannes Festival film. Like, this would be perfect. Did it win the Palme d'Or in 1980? Maybe. Who knows? But it should have. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, definitely should have been shown a door of some type. Anyway, I think I thought you were gonna do like a mustache and just like gold chains and shit, but I like what we have going on.
Well, I mean, I figure sometimes you got to step up to the plate and you have to dress up or something. Don't you have like, I know you have little friends, but don't you have acquaintances that maybe could, do something for you in the movie business to help you look like these people?
Maybe we all need work, so maybe we'll see. We'll see. We have 9,000 more of these movies to go.
Exactly.
So this is our 1980 Maniac. Chad, what is the story behind this one?
So, as Keith said, this is the last one of 1980. This one is a stinker. Spoiler alert, as far as that goes. So we're just going to dive right into this movie. Because they dive right into it, with no story, no anything. It starts off with...
What's crazy is they never get to a story either, but go ahead.
That's true. It's rough in that regard. We jump right into the dude, like, he's just like heavy breathing into like the camera. I mean, it's just nasty, like him breathing. It's disgusting, quite frankly. The dude uses some like viewfinder or something at the beach, and he's watching like a couple at the beach, and the couple's making out or something. And then the dude leaves. And the girl gets her slit throat by the killer. I can't remember. I think we don't see who the killer is at this point, right? Like you don't know.
I
I don't think that we see that it's him.
Yeah, I don't know if he's wearing like a ski mask. I think he kind of is. But then in the
He's
next
definitely
scene,
got gloves on as far as that goes.
Yeah.
You can't really make out anything. So he slits the girl's throat. The guy comes back and he uses like wire and, slits his throat as far as all that goes. And then, like you said, Joe Spinell, here's our introduction. He wakes up screaming like, he was dreaming or remembering, or it has nothing to do with any of this. So I've never seen this movie before. It's the first time watch for me. How about you, Keith?
the first time watch.
Okay. So at this point, I don't know if Joe Spinell's actually the killer. I'm
Mhm.
thinking he probably is, but I guess they're trying to keep it a little bit out there. Like, I don't know, is this a killer? Is this not? Did he dream this? Or, so I don't know for sure, at least myself, if he's the killer. But then we're going to pad this movie out a little bit because it takes 5 minutes for him to put his clothes on. And we watch every agonizing detail of him just getting out of bed and putting his clothes on.
Which, like, okay, so at the beginning of this film, I don't mind it because it feels almost A24-ish. Like, it feels like we're taking a serious look at something. And I'm, and in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this is 1980, probably shot in the 1970s, thus meaning we're right after Zodiac. We're right in the middle, like at the tail end of Son of Sam. So it's obviously pulling from those things. And comparatively to some of the other movies that we've watched, there is this like psychological shift in who the character is, as opposed to Fade to Black was like our other psychopath, and The Shining was our other psychopath. But at times, this one feels a little more grounded up until the kill that we see him do. But I'll let you keep going. And then, yeah.
Right. So, he gets ready, like I said, takes forever, and he actually leaves the house and he's walking down the street and he picks up a hooker. So they go up to a hotel room. And what's so funny about that is they get up to the hotel room and she's like in the bathroom. He starts taking off his clothes. And I'm thinking, like, are we going to watch him take off his clothes for 5 minutes now? Because we just saw him put on his clothes for 5 minutes. Luckily, thank God, the hooker interrupts and she comes out and she's like posing for him. And then they start making out. And then he just starts choking her. He's on top of her, choking her to death, basically. But then we're like kind of seeing through his eyes. He's seeing somebody different, than who he's actually choking. But he ends up, killing her, choking her to death as far as that goes. But he immediately like regrets it or feels bad or what have you, because he runs into the bathroom, he throws up, he's like crying. I thought that's kind of interesting. I mean, it's not like the first time I've seen that before, but at least he's not just a straight up, I'm going to kill everybody and I hate everybody. He feels some sort of remorse or regret or something for what he did. Whether or not it's like, oh crap, what did I just do? I'm going to get caught. That could be the remorse. I don't know, but he feels something. So I did think that was, a little bit interesting. But so after that though, he feels bad and he immediately goes for her and just starts scalping her. He cuts off her head, cuts off her scalp as far as, and what's funny is, so my mother, she watches this podcast and she likes horror movies. She doesn't like love horror movies, but she likes horror movies and she'll watch her baby born in anything. So she's definitely going to watch this podcast. But she said, I turned it off. I couldn't watch it. So that's the moment that she turned it off.
So she watches the movies with the podcast? Like,
she watches the movie first, so she kind of knows what we're talking about. And then she'll watch the podcast after.
That's dedication. I wish my parents were as loving as yours and Rob's as far as watching stuff. Those are our only two listeners that we have. How incredible is that?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So she'll watch it. And this is when she checked out the scalping scene. So
that's the end of the movie being remotely interesting. So she did a good job.
So good job, Mom.
Yeah.
So he, after he scalps her, he goes home and there is a weird mannequin just laying in his bed. And he starts talking to himself or someone else, his inner monologue. I don't really understand. Like, I get it. He's a crazy person, but it's still kind of weird. And then he starts dressing another mannequin with the hooker's clothes. And then he pulls out the scalp and he puts that on the mannequin. So yeah, definitely super weirdo, creep behavior. You know.
not a question who the killer is anymore. We figured it out now.
Yeah, exactly. I'm on the case, detective. I think I know who it is. So he puts the scalp on, and then little Robert Rodriguez style, he has a violin case, and he's putting like a weapons, like maybe a sawed-off shotgun or a shotgun into the violin.
A shit ton of weapons he never uses in this movie. Like, he has a medieval axe, he puts it in there. He has like poison darts, and we never see any of it.
And you know what is funny about that scene is, and this is filmmaking. To me, it just didn't work because the way that it's cut, we don't know for sure that it's Joe Spinell putting the stuff in the case, because it's like he's messing with the mannequin, and then it cuts to, it almost looks like a different place. Someone putting weapons in with gloves on.
Yeah.
And they intentionally don't show you who's putting weapons. Like the way it's set up, it's again, it's like they're almost trying to keep an air of mystery on who's actually doing this now, even though that lasts for 2 seconds, because after all the weapons get put in there, then it shows Joe leaving his apartment with the violin bag. So to me, it was just a weird shot construction, the way they were setting it up. Like, did you feel that at all, or did you not even pick up on any of it?
That's the most least of my concerns about their filmmaking. The vast majority of this movie has an ADR growl throughout the entire film. There is literally a scene that we're about to come to where two nurses are outside talking, the most fabricated fucking dialogue. Chat GPT wrote this movie. and there's cuts to coverage of the second nurse, and like, you can tell someone's telling her action because she literally looks this way and then goes into the scene. And it's like, and at that point, like, it's all just downhill. You know what I mean?
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So, then we cut to what's his face? He's outside a bar or something or whatever. And Tom Savini, baby.
Yeah.
Tom Savini's in this movie. I love Tom Savini. We talked about him in one of the prior ones. And
Friday
I said,
the 13th.
Yep. Yeah. It won't be the last time we talk about Tom Savini, because, horror legend, as far as,
and I think probably the best actor in the entire movie. I don't mind the girl that's with him, but you can tell, like, maybe it's just the clearest observation of their objectives. Like, she wants to talk, she wants to get comfortable. He wants, sorry, Miss Dowdy, a blowjob. Like, that's the coverage of the film,
Exactly. So Tom Savini and his girl, they go and they just pull off on the freeway, on a random place. They go parking, and so they start making out, and she looks up. They're in the back seat of the car, and I'm surprised so far, especially this movie, especially where it goes, especially the star. We haven't seen any nudity yet. There's no nudity in this scene. There was no nudity with the hooker earlier. So I'm thinking, like, I guess there's not going to be any nudity in this film, which I was wrong about. But so they're making out, and she sees through the window Joe Spinell watching them, and it is the creepiest thing because he is like right up on the window. He's not trying to hide anything at all. He's like, what's going on? And so she freaks out. They hop in the front seat, and he cranks up the car. Let's go. Let's get out of here. This is my favorite part of the whole movie. When he turns on his lights or cranks up the car, what have you. Joe Spinell's standing at the front of the car, a little ways away, maybe 10, 15 feet or something like that. Not like right up to the hood. And he just runs full speed and jumps up on the hood of the car with a shotgun and just blows Tom Savini away. I'm not gonna lie, I loved it. I loved that. It looked awesome.
It looked awesome. It was a cool, like, I was surprised at the athleticism because he jumps up there like he's Captain America. You know what I mean? Yes. And then and Tom Savini's head explodes like a gusher. But the crazy thing to me is that beach scene and this scene feel like they're just ripped out of the headlines of the Zodiac killings, like 100%. And that's just, I don't know. It's super close to when that happened. That's kind of ballsy. I mean, it's not super close, but it is relatively close, maybe 10 years removed.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But like I said, the special effects looked awesome, but even like, I don't remember ever seeing that where the killer just runs, jumps up on the hood of the car and just, so.
And it is frightening because it's like you have no escape. You know what I mean?
Especially with a shotgun like that. I mean, nothing, so then the girl's screaming and going crazy. And he just basically, not looking as cool, of course, but he shoots her point blank in the face too.
Yeah.
So he kills him. And then we cut to, it's the news or something talking about a killing spree. And this is what I'm thinking. You're 100% right about the Zodiac thing and all this stuff and killing spree, but so the first two people that he killed on the beach, slitting their throats. This is a completely different MO.
Absolutely.
This is nowhere. It's not on the beach. It's two random people in a car. He shoots them. So, but they're all, again, I've said this before on the podcast. I don't like it when the police or the narrative tells you things they really shouldn't know potentially.
Yeah.
We know it because we've seen it all. We know it's the same guy.
Yeah.
But the police or the news knows that it's all the same guy. And again, the hooker was killed too. Also a little different. It's not a couple, but that one I can kind of go with because what they also say is due to the mutilated effect of their bodies, the fact that the bodies were so mutilated, they think it's connected. Okay, I will go with that for the first three kills. But because they scalped one, presumably he scalped the other two. But these guys, he blew their faces off with a shotgun. There was no scalping or anything necessarily, I would think.
Well, I mean, there is the potential that he could scalp the girl, but I think the other thing is like he doesn't seem to scalp the men. Like I don't remember seeing any hair,
right?
Like and I think like one of the things that I do like about the idea of this movie is it does feel more at the beginning of it up until like around this point, it feels more authentic into what drives serial killers and stuff like that. So he is like a sexual, mainly targeting women or lovers, but I think that's still the Zodiac Son of Sam thing. Yeah, I always I just interpreted they know they're all connected because after, even though we don't see it always, he's removing the hair or he fought, but I don't know. Yeah, he does. There's no way he does it for Tom Savini because there's no head left at all.
No, but I feel like also this one, Tom Savini's girl, again, it could be the way the shot set up the angle. It looks like he's shooting her in the face.
Yeah.
With a shotgun. Yeah. That's what it looks like to me. It looks like he blew both of their faces off. But
yeah,
again, it's not even like we're cutting to detectives trying to figure this case out anyway. So really, this is just for it to be in the news, for people to talk about it. There's a serial killer, like you said, Zodiac style, Son of Sam stuff. Like that's why they talk about it, to get people, talking about. But there's definitely no searching in the case or anything like that for clues.
Yeah.
But so then after he kills them, we cut back to his room, and I really like this touch in the room. There's a poster on his wall of a naked woman, but he's ripped the poster out where her boobs are, so you can't see her boobs. And then in her groin area, he has like scraped it all off.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a great touch for like a crazy serial. Like he has it up on his wall, but he can't look at it. It's bad. I can't look at that. So I really thought that was super cool, that touch in the room.
And it also sort of like suggests something about like the killings erasing sexuality, because even that scene with the sex worker earlier on, he can't do it, right? He's finding difficulty like doing it, and then it seems to be like it's his mother. He's seeing the mother is the connection, and so maybe it's because his sexuality was chastised or something. I don't know. I like to think there's a seed of psychology in there, but then the whole fucking thing turns into Looney Tunes, so I don't really know.
Right. Because as you said, next he handcuffs himself to the mannequin and just lays down in the bed with the mannequin and just cries.
Yeah.
You know, again, dude's he's a maniac. Yeah, what can you say? He's
Whoa.
a maniac.
Oh, and he's dancing like he's never danced before.
So later he's at the park and this lady takes his picture. And I don't know if you know this actress, but her name's Caroline Munro. She's in several things that I've seen her in before. I'm a fan of her. I actually like her.
I don't know that I know her. Let me look her up. I
Yeah,
like her.
she's in a few different things, and I like her in this movie as well. But yeah, she's been in some. This is not like a good thing for her necessarily, but she's been in a few Mystery Science Theater 3000 films I've watched.
Oh, poor lady. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not because she's bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Understood.
So, but yeah, I do like her. I've seen her and stuff.
Oh, she's
And,
in The Spy Who Loved Me. Okay. This was a
yeah.
big get for this movie then.
I thought, again, I don't know the timing of all that, but yeah, I feel like she was, again, I've seen her in several things. She wasn't just like a random, person.
She's still working. So that's crazy. I'm trying to find some more movies that she's The House of the Gorgon. These are all like in 2019. So she's still doing a lot of like horror movies. Midsummer Murders, the TV show. She's on a couple episodes of that. I know this is good entertainment, me just reading her IMDb. Anything else I know that's big? Don't Open Till Christmas. She's in that. Maniac 1980. So prior to that, she's in the New Avengers TV show, which is the British one. Star Crash, which I'm sure is on Mystery Science.
That's one of the ones I saw her in for sure. Star Crash.
The Spy Who Loved Me, At the Earth's Core, which I've totally seen. Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter, The Golden Voyage of Sinbad, Dr. Phoebes Rises Again with Vincent Price, which she's uncredited in that. Dracula AD 1972, The Abominable Dr. Phoebes. She got the original Casino Royale. That's crazy.
Yeah, so she's in some stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of surprised. Yeah, you didn't recognize her, but
Awesome.
But yeah, I thought it was cool. When she showed up. But so she takes his picture and he sneaks over and like looks at her bag, which has her name and address on it. And listen, I cannot stress enough how disgusting this guy's breathing is.
I hate
every
it.
turn.
I
like,
hate it.
Oh, it's not even just breathing too. He's
It's
like
growling. It's like all that is the worst part. And that just keeps increasing because at this scene where he's at the park, she takes his picture because he stops a child and he doesn't kill the child, but there was a creepy vibe there. The child goes away, but you hear him breathing and masturbating noises like his Ron Jeremy self the entire fucking time, and I hate it. I hate it so much. Go ahead.
Yeah, it is disgusting. It would turn you off from the movie anyway, regardless. Yeah. So now we go to the scene you had mentioned earlier where these two nurses are talking, and they're talking about the serial killer on the loose. And this, it's dangerous in this city now. And one of the nurses leaves, she gets a ride, and the other nurse waits. She's looking at her watch, so she's clearly waiting for someone to pick her up, and she waits conservatively 30 seconds before she's just like, screw this guy, I'm walking home, even though I just talked about the serial killer.
Or it's a bus she's waiting for, and if she waited 30 seconds and it didn't show up, she's right to leave because that means it's not coming. But I do think like right before that, there's a line of dialogue where one nurse is like, "Oh, and tomorrow make sure to check on Dr. Jacobs. He fell again. Ha ha ha!" And it's like a weird ass like why the people don't know. That's just dumb dialogue. I hate it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So again, she makes a terrible decision to not wait on the bus, her ride, waiting for a taxi to drive by. I don't know. Yeah. But again, she's safe in front of the hospital. So she goes walking. I think she's walking home, but she actually goes to the subway and, Joe Spinell's following her and she realizes she's being followed, or at least she thinks she's being followed because she's freaking out a little bit. And she starts running to catch the subway and she misses the train. And now apparently, again, I've been to New York. I've actually been to the subway, not in 1980, but it seems like there's only one exit then in the whole subway because she cannot get out now.
at all.
The only exit is where the bad guy is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So she can't get out. So she goes and hides in the bathroom.
And then they ADR all of her breathing, yet she's making weird ass noises too the entire time.
That's what I had. I had that. This is the loudest person trying to be quiet ever in the history of cinema.
Ever. Literally, she's trying to hide from him and she's going, like the entire time.
It's like she's almost like saying out loud, "Oh my God, don't find me over here." Like that's how loud.
And the sound she's making don't match her face at all. Like nothing. Like she's just staring, and you're hearing her moo like a cow, and it's the weirdest. Fucking, I hate the sound first.
Cinema. Yeah, that's what this movie is. Cinema.
I'm shocked they used the camera to record this thing. So.
But yeah, that to me that was so funny. It was fascinating, just how loud she was about it. And obviously, he finds her. Or he knows she's in there because, again, she's the loudest person I've ever heard in my entire life.
Absolutely.
I've seen people scream, trying to hide and scream because a mouse runs over their legs, and they were not even as loud as her.
Absolutely.
I've seen people sneeze trying to be quiet, not as loud as her.
I've seen construction workers that were quieter than her. Like she couldn't have been louder if she was watching a Donald Trump speech on her cell phone, like hiding. Like, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So, she thinks he leaves. She walks out. He grabs her, kills her, stabs her, scalps her, all that stuff. So then we cut to the photographer's house. That was, Caroline Monroe from earlier. So the photographer got a knock at the door, and it's the killer. And this is batshit crazy as far as I'm concerned.
Batshit crazy. I like this thread. Okay, so he doesn't want any pictures of him out there. All right. But then the turn it makes.
So he knocks on the door and she's like, "Who is it?" He's like, "I'm Frank. You took my picture at the park the other day." And she's like, "Oh, come on in." No, how did you find me? Like, what are you doing here? She's just like more than happy. Again, there's also a serial killer on the loose. I don't know if you guys are aware. It's in the news. There's a serial killer in the loose. You are a single female at home, and a random dude is at your door because he said, "You took my picture at the park." And you just let him in. I mean, she's like, "Come on in." So they start talking, and this dude is charming to her.
Absolutely. And it's like, and this is, I think, where it lost me. Like, I like and maybe I have a bias. I like the idea of a fat, ugly serial killer not being able to keep his shit together. For some reason, that appeals to me. But now he walks in and he's like, "Hey, Toots, how you doing?" Smacks her on the ass. "You want to go to a different state and get spaghetti with me?" "Sure, I do. This sounds wonderful." And then they fucking go on a date. Oh,
exactly. They go on a date, and it takes no convincing whatsoever.
This is if David Berkowitz was in a rom-com with Reese Witherspoon. That's what just happened. And
my gosh. Listen, and even some of the stuff he's saying to her is a little bit creepy to a degree.
There's not even
especially if it's a dude you've never met this guy before.
Yeah.
He's talking about like taking pictures or something. You can keep their soul or something. You could possess them or something like that.
Which I think would have been great if he didn't play it off as charming, right? Like, because there's a whole scene where he's talking about seeing her again and she's busy, and he like goes into this incel moment about like, you're probably going to be busy every time I call or something like that, right? But he does it in such a way where he's still like, she's still laughing, and it's like, no, feel uncomfortable, because what he's saying is uncomfortable. Like,
yes,
I don't know.
And listen, I may be biased because I like this actress. I feel like she's a 10 and he is a 5, especially when you throw in all the creepy, weird shit he's saying.
You're being super generous. Or maybe things were just, ratings were just different in 1980. I don't know.
Exactly. Like when again, like you said, they go for spaghetti out on a date. And this is what he says to her. One
more say.
Go ahead.
I don't understand. This guy's name is like Frankie Vizzo, right? They're in the middle of New York. The only fucking place you know to get spaghetti is New Jersey. Look, I lived in New York for 3.5 years. If I step outside, somebody's just gonna hand me spaghetti, right? And that's like, anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
While they're in Jersey eating spaghetti, he says to her, "You're the most beautiful woman I've seen since my mom." That is like, oh my gosh. And she is totally charmed by him. It's unbelievable. He looks the way he looks. He's saying this crazy ass shit. And then he pulls a picture of his mom, a single solitary picture, not in his wallet.
No.
It's just in his coat pocket, his front coat pocket. He keeps, I guess, a picture of his mom in his front coat pocket to show her what she looks like.
But what's interesting too is like, it did make me pause and realize, oh yeah, people used to carry pictures of other people in their wallets. And that's something that, like, that's probably a whole industry that died out. Like when people, because I haven't bought a wallet in years that has the little see-through picture thing in it. So just a flash from a different time. But not that he's using a wallet. No, he's
no, he's not even using a wallet. It's just, it's by itself.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand. I mean, he clearly drove there. The prop people can't give him a wallet to make it, like, I don't know.
Also, there's a long, I just feel in his portrayal, like, I think he's a fine actor, not in this, in other things. But I think, like, there's a moment where she's like, do you have a picture of him? Or a picture of her? And he's like, yeah. And then he eats another plate and then reaches in to grab it. But, like, it takes, like, 2 more courses of his meal before he fucking.
And I think after he shows her the picture, she's like, "Oh, that's great. You want to go out on another date or something like that?" Like,
I wish it was this easy to be a disgusting man and date hot British chicks.
I don't know, Keith. I think you're selling yourself short because I've seen some of the women you've dated. They're pretty attractive. But again, it probably wasn't easy.
No, not at all. How many times I had to compliment how hot my mom was?
Yeah, exactly.
Does that count as the problematic age relationship? The mother. And
I'm getting to it, but yeah,
okay.
it's in here. I'm gonna make my case for the problematic age. So this is a little bit confusing. It's not something I'm worried about, but it seems like they set up a second date, but then he shows up at her photo shoot.
Yeah. So
they just met. Dude shows up at where she's working. Again, totally charmed by him. Like, no, this is great. Sit down, have a drink, hang out, watch the whole thing. You know, stay as long as you want or whatever. I'm just taking pictures of these women. And the dude that the killer, you know, Spinella, he sees like a necklace off to the side and he takes that necklace. So that's one of the model's necklaces. So then the model goes home. She goes to her house and she's starting to get ready for a bath. And there's a knock at her door and it's Joe Spinella. And he's like, "Hey, you left your necklace at the photo shoot. So I brought it to you." Now, she doesn't say, "Come on in," but she is totally normal with him. She's not like, "How did you know I was here?" Like, I'd be like, "What? How did you even know where I live?"
Yeah, I absolutely, but I could forgive. It feels like she is a little cautious of him in comparison to everybody else, but she does, because I mean, she holds that door for a second. But I would assume, oh, he's from the photographers. I remember seeing him there. The photographer probably sent him over with it and told. But
So finally, you would get some nudity because she gets in the bathtub, but I can't remember like how Spinella even got in the house.
He puts something.
Oh, that's right,
on the door.
Yes, when he's actually talking to her, he puts something on the door so that it won't lock. Because we don't like really see him do anything other than like he's now in the house.
Yeah.
And he grabs her, he attacks her, and he ties her up, and then he's talking to her like it's his mom. You know, that's the way he's talking to her, and it seems like. The way he's talking to her, he's in love with his mom. Not like, "I love you, mom, you're my mom." He's in love with his mom. So that's where I feel like, among many other things, this is the problematic age thing because obviously it's his mother, much older than him. But so what that means, Keith, is every single one that we have seen from 1980 had a problematic age.
Yeah, and a lot of them
relationship.
And a vast. I think a couple of them had incestual relationships. What with Motel Heaven, brother sister fuckers and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's 1980 was rough, man.
It would be, again, this is off the top of my head. I don't remember, but like I said, Motel Hell. This one had incestuous vibes, and Fade to Black with his aunt's not aunt, mother, mom, whatever.
Absolutely, that one scene where like come home and rub my feet or whatever. Yeah, that fucking. And I also feel Pamela Voorhees. I mean, it is a maternal love, but it's a little too intense of a maternal love, you know?
Yeah.
So okay.
So again, so now he's talking to his mom. He's talking to her like his mom, and then he just kills her right? After maybe a minute saying, "I'm not going to hurt you" or whatever. But then he kills her. Then
well, it's not even a minute. He literally says, "I'm not going to hurt you." Stab. Like it's instantaneous.
Yeah, I'm not going to hurt you, Mom. Bam.
Yeah.
So then he actually sets up a second date with a real second date, and he's like, "Hey, you want to go on a date? How about the next 30 minutes?" And she's like, "I'll be ready in 15."
Like, does this maniac have the best dick in the world? Like, is that what's happening? Like,
it's awesome. And then, if it's not bad enough, this is the date. They get in the car. Hey, before we go and eat, I just wonder if we could just go by the graveyard because I want to like say goodbye to my mom or whatever he said he wanted to say.
And
she's like, "Oh yeah, totally."
Yeah, perfect. No, that makes total sense. It's literally him. Hey, I know we're driving to Boston to get some French fries, but like, you mind if we visit my dead mother real quick?
Yeah, she's like, "Well, usually I do that on the third date, but second date's fine, I guess." Well, yeah, we'll do it. That's fine.
But it also has to have been longer than the second date because she mentions that he went to the funeral of the girl we just saw him kill.
Yeah, because she was so like, "Oh, that's so great of you to come to the funeral," or whatever.
Yeah. And so I guess that was their second date, or maybe implied.
Well, the photo shoot could have been the second date. Who knows? But
who knows what dates were in 1980? Because literally, you could just follow a woman home and be like, "We're together now," and they'd be like, "Okay." So weird ass date. Go ahead.
Yeah, at the graveyard. And I can't remember whatever he says to his mom or whatever, but he actually just turns and attacks the photographer.
Well, he says, "What?" I don't remember what the girl's name is that he just killed that we just saw, who's already been buried now. Let's say her name is Maureen, but he's like, Maureen saw, and she's like, what does that mean?
Oh yeah, that's what it was. So he started freaking out a little bit in front of her, and then he attacked her. But she gets away from him, and then she like hits him with a shovel, cuts him or something. She gets him pretty good. And she gets away, and he's like injured, but he's just like, screaming for his mom. Yeah. I can see that, as far as what we've seen so far. And then we hear voiceover and flashback of his mom like punishing him or something for whatever happened in the past,
and she's punishing him very interestingly, not only with doing something like putting him in the closet, but also with her monotone line delivery. That's the second punishment. You've been bad, boy. That's what it is over and over again. It's
Get in the closet, please.
Yes.
So he's like, he ends up falling down or getting back to his mom's grave, and he's like laying over the grave, and then straight out of Carrie, decayed corpse hand grabs him, and his mom rises from the grave and grabs him, and then but it's just in his head. It's because I guess it cuts to, and then we just see the normal grave. So he was just freaking out imagining that. But he heads home, and when he gets home, his mannequins come to life. And they grab all of the weapons that you said were not going to be used. Boy, you were way wrong about that.
Way wrong.
Chekhov's throwing star. I mean, like everything. They grab all the weapons, and they're attacking him, and they're beating him, and they stab him, and they rip his head off. I still think this is not after we've seen the movie, it's not like I'm saying something crazy. Even when I was watching it, I was like, this is in his head as well. I feel,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? These mannequins are not coming to life. This is just like the grave, you know.
Yeah.
But I was thinking maybe he is stabbing himself or something like that, you know. So they rip his head off. Now it's the next day, and police are, you know, blasting down the road, presumably because the photographer said, you know, this guy attacked me. And so
But they
go
wanted to
towards him.
wait a day just to make sure.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly. Well, it's too scary to go at night, Keith.
Oh,
You have to
obviously.
wait till the sun's up.
clearly, yeah.
So the police show up and they find him stabbed in his bed. So his head's not off. So it's not like what we just saw. You know, he just is stabbed in his bed. And what's so funny is these cops look at him. They don't touch him. They just leave and shut the door behind them. Like, our work is done.
And
The
these
case closed.
Absolutely. And I think they did a great job casting these cops who they don't give any lines to. But one of them has like a rogue X-Men hair streak thing. And I was like, I want to know about interesting mutant cop. Like, that's who I want to follow. But they don't say anything. And it's also like, there's a moment when the camera is over here, bed, and then you have the cops behind the bed. And you see one cop like smack the other cop. And then he just looks at him. And then they just leave. And I'm like, the fuck was that? Like, it's
They don't touch the body at all. They don't know this guy's dead. He could be faking it. You know, he heard cops coming, you know.
Well, you say that the last frame of the movie.
Yeah, so they leave, and then we zoom in on his face, and then he opens his eyes. Maniac. That's the movie, guys.
What if Captain Lou Albino was a serial killer? Like, that's what this movie is. What, like,
Or Captain Lou Albino, but Captain Lou Albino, that'd be interesting too.
It is Albino, isn't it? I like, my thing is, I think there's some interesting aspects to this movie. I just think the execution is fucking horrible. Like the 80-yard breathing, some bad acting. I don't think any of the self-monologuing stuff works at all. Like,
No, it doesn't.
The beginning I find interesting. Key parts I find interesting. I like the psychological take. I like him having, visions. I like the mannequins killing him. But it's just none of it worked in the execution of it. I would be interested to see what the remake does with the Elijah Wood one.
Yeah, and we'll talk about how we would kind of remake it here in just a second. But I agree. First of all, there's not like enough story here.
Yeah.
We're just seeing a guy go from person to person and killing them, and we're just getting little bits and pieces, not enough for a story at all.
And I think, like, too, the biggest problem for me is the character's not consistent, because when he pukes, when he throws up, that was cool. That was interesting. That was compelling. Him struggling with what's inside of him, that's interesting. But then by the time we get later on to the movie, hey, look at me, I'm super charming, and I'm like confident in what I'm doing, and I'm happy with it. And if I would have seen, even if you want to make him accept the fact he's a killer, let me see that journey of him accepting it. But there's no journey there. It's like,
Right.
So I don't know.
I mean, it's definitely, they tried to they just tried to make a little bit of a copycat of the serial killer vibe at the time without a story. But again, they had Tom Savini. Let's have some good special effects with some cool kills. So let's scalp some people.
Yeah.
You know, Tom Savini can make that look cool. That being said, I love him jumping on the car. And that is one of the, out of the movies that we've watched, that's one of the coolest moments I've seen. Now, it could be because I've never seen this before. I love that so much. Awesome.
Look, and I think, again, that to me, I know a lot of other movies, Shining definitely deals with psychology, Fade to Black does, but this one felt like a grittier assessment of it. And I was excited about that because that did feel different, but then it just wasn't. My Letterboxd score was 0.5 star. Like, that lets you know where I'm at.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Fucking piece of
shit.
Oh
my gosh. So mine is 2.5. Again, 2.5 is not good. You know, 3's good, 3 and up is good, 2.5 below is bad. So again, I'm going to give it some props for some of the stuff that it did. You know, particularly that one shot. Like, I love it. I give it 1 star for that. You know, I just love that. But I felt like this was not as, I don't want to say polished, because this movie's not polished, but Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Absolutely.
Feels that way, but Henry Portrait makes me feel sick to my stomach because it seems so gritty and real and believable in every single way whatsoever.
And I also feel that Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer is honestly, it's a hard movie to watch, but it's one of my favorite horror movies just because it does feel so authentic. But that's because you had documentary filmmakers making it, right? And it was same like this. It was talking about something that was very relevant at the time, the Henry Lee Lucas killings. But I think where this almost feels like Maniac feels like it was shot by people that do porn. And that feels like the very beginning of Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, that amazing dolly shots where you just see the bodies and you're hearing how they died. Like that in of itself is an elevation of like what we're doing. And yeah, and I think that Henry loses me a little bit when he gets into some of the Otis videotaping stuff, but I still feel that's a better version of this.
Right. Yeah, definitely a better version of this.
Yeah.
So, that being said, what we do at the end is we remake the movie. If we were doing it today with today's actors, even though this has been remade with Elijah Wood, I'm not quite sure of the year, but I think it's probably been over 10 years, don't you think?
Yeah, I think 2012, maybe.
Yeah. So about 10 years ago they remade it. So this is how I would do this one. I would remake this, potentially miniseries or something like that, but I would lean heavily into flashbacks, and not even necessarily be flashbacks, but what we see the past with his mother. And we see a lot of child maniac with his mother and how she treats him, how, let's say, she puts him in the closet while she has sex with men because she's afraid of him just being out, so she's got to keep him by, and she's a prostitute. So she is just man after man, and he's there for all of it. And then we see a lot of that past. And again, juxtaposed with today. Then as far as casting, I would cast, this is really because of the look, but I would cast David Krumholtz as Maniac. He looks a little bit like the Maniac, or he can look a little bit like that. He's a much better actor. So I would go David Krumholtz. The mother, again, in the flashback stuff, which would be heavy in this, I would do Jessica Chastain.
Great.
As his mom. And the photographer would be, again, I want the photographer to look a little bit like Jessica Chastain. So I would do Sophie Turner from Game of Thrones.
Oh, that's great.
Both redheads. So that's the route I would go if I was remaking this today.
That's awesome. I would also do a series. I think I would do 6 episodes, like a Netflix tight 6. And I would focus more on that conflict of him trying to stop it and keep finding the pressures to go forth. And like, can he be a normal person once he finds this girl? I would smooth out some of that. Like, I would smooth out his charmingness and make him more awkward at all times. See his job. Because in this, he paints landscapes. Fuck off. That's dumb. That's like, I would give him like he would tell people that, but he would work for a construction crew or something like that, right?
Right.
And feed into how in the 70s, this monster had the opportunity to grow, and no one's seeing it because everything is a little dirty, And so I would do Michael Gandolfini as the guy and lean into that Italian, American descent, like, and play with that and make him as awkward as fuck. And then for the girl, I would do Daisy Ridley. So still have the British thing, but you look at them and you think, oh, this is something that wouldn't work, but still play with that idea. And I think at the end of it, he would wind up killing her at the cemetery. Then he would go home. The mannequins would attack him. And he's already like half beaten to death because she probably whacked him with a shovel a bunch of times. It's the climax.
Sure.
The mannequins would kill him, and you think that's the end of it. And then there's a shot prior to him going home where he's standing by the harbor, I think. Do that. So he survives. They didn't catch him. We don't have super X-Men comic cop. And like, and so he's still out there. And you realize, throw more visions in it and all that stuff. I think it can. But fuck this movie. Yeah. That being said, That is 8 movies from 1980s. This is our 8th official episode, 9 if we include our interview. But we're going to rank the movies that we've seen from 1980. We're going to do this for every year. And I think once we get to parts 2 and part 3, we'll lump all of our 1980s together, which is fucking horrific that there's going to be more if this is what we're dealing with already.
I'm gonna tell you, I've watched In Search of Darkness 3, and there's some movies they talked about that I've never heard of, but when they show clips of it, I'm like, this looks like I'm gonna be sick to my stomach watching this. But
Yeah,
we'll get there.
So let's go back and forth. We'll start with our number 8s and work our way up to number 1. Give me your number 8. What is the 8th, the worst movie from 1980?
So for me, the worst one out of the ones that we have seen was Fade to Black. And it was mostly because it failed miserably on a good premise. I really liked the premise. I liked the idea. I wanted so much after that very beginning when it flashed back to the movie and then he kind of acted it out. I was like, oh, this might be really good. And it wasn't.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the lead actor either. I didn't think he was very good.
Yeah, he's better in it. For me, my number 8 is Maniac, because it's a piece of shit. And same thing, like good, not even a good premise, an interesting couple of things in there. You gave me 16 paragraphs and I really liked 4 of the word choices, right? Like that's what this movie was. I like my version of it already better than theirs. So that's my number 8 of the worst. What's your number 7?
Number 7 is Maniac. Again, for a lot of the reasons that we talked about, it just barely edges out Fade to Black, not because it's successful at the premise, but again, I do like that kill so much. I do like Carolyn Monroe. I like just a little bit more of the things in the movie, but again, these are the bottom of the barrel ones.
Yeah. For me, number 7 is Motel Hell, because we didn't see motels hardly any, and there was no hell. And what a weird fucking movie. I like the Pig Man, but what a weird fucking movie. What do you got for number 6?
My number 6 is Motel Hell as well. And it's fun in some parts, but I just feel like it's not intentionally that way. It's just looking back at it, it's like, that's funny. I can't believe they did that. But I don't think they were intentionally trying to make really a fun movie necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely agree. My number 6 is Fade to Black. A lot of the same reasons. Like, I think there is a good concept there. I think, again, poorly executed. I like Dennis Christopher. This is just not. There's parts of this he fits really well, and then parts of it he's not in the running for. You know what I mean? So yeah, that also, I just don't understand how he does the makeup so quickly for all these parts. Like, just go work in movies, man. You have a fucking talent.
It didn't take me long to do my setup for that movie. It took me just a couple minutes.
Yeah. What's your number 5?
Number 5 is The Fog. And it was mainly because it was slow in a lot of parts. And it seemed like 3 or 4 different stories all never came together necessarily. Like, this dude's off doing this, she's off doing this is happening. So, I mean, it's fine. It's John Carpenter. There's some creepy parts, but it's number 5.
Yeah, my number 5 is The Fog as well. I think it's fine. I think it's a cool little ghost story. I like the movie. To me, for some reason, though, it's one of those that feels the most dated. Like, it feels like that movie can only happen in the early 80s, right? That and Dress to Kill for different reasons. But yeah, there's something sort of quaint about it. I love Catwoman in it. She's great.
Yes.
But it's just not my favorite. What do you got for number 4?
So now we're into, I like these a good bit, like the first 4, not so much. These 4. Yeah. So my number 4 is The Changeling. And I think George C. Scott just kills it. He's awesome in this movie.
Yeah, I agree completely. My number 4 is Friday the 13th, the first one. Look, I love the Jason series, so it pains me to put it that far down, but it is, there's a lot of great to it. But if we're cutting down like the movies that just really appeal to me, there are other Fridays that I like better than this. In the third one, they feed a bunny rabbit a lot, and I like that one at the beginning. And so this one would be my number 4. Where's your number 3?
Number 3 is Dress to Kill. This was a lot of fun. And you kind of looked at it, really is ahead of its time in a lot of ways, and then the opposite, in a lot of ways where, you wouldn't really make it today. But it was saying some things. And like I said, when they had that one scene from like Phil Donahue, I was frankly shocked that was in the movie.
Yeah. Number 3 for me is Dress to Kill. Look, I think as far as these last 3 for me are the ones that are just like well-constructed movies. And it's not just the nostalgia, but it's like how they're crafted. And I think really good filmmakers put them together. That Hitchcock sequence, I know you hated it. Fucking love it. Like I love that walking back and forth through the museum. I don't know why it's so compelling to me. Probably just because I like Hitchcock a lot. Michael Caine is great. Don't do this again, but Michael Caine is great, and I just think there's a lot of good stuff in this movie, and a lot of, like you said, some interesting, compelling things. Some things are cheesy. The fact that the kid's a computer genius in 1980 is kind of weird, but other than that, like I think a lot of fun stuff.
Yep.
What do you got for number 2?
Number 2, this could be controversial. I have number 2 as The Changeling is my number 2. I'm sorry, not Changeling, The Shining. Controversial. I've got The Changeling on there twice. That's so controversial.
Yeah, you just eliminated The Shining from your list.
Yeah, The Shining is my number 2. What can you say? It's a classic. It could be number 1. It could be everyone's number 1
Absolutely.
of all time. Not just the 1980, but I'm going to go into my reasons about my number 1, which you already know what it is based on, but The Shining is my number 2.
That's okay. My number 2 as well is The Shining. I think Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall and even the kid, like everybody in this movie is fucking perfect at what they're doing. And it is like, it's almost an event movie, like, because it is everything is such a large scale, these brilliant wide shots. You see the artistry and the mastery, but also the scare itself, how symmetrical everything is kind of terrifying. On this new watching of it, I saw a little bit more of the Lovecraftian-esque horror, and I really dug that. It's a classic. It's just a great movie. And I think just because my number 1 is a little bit more personal to me, that's, why it's there. But yeah, so your number 1 is?
Number 1 is Friday the 13th. And I'm not a crazy person. Friday the 13th is not the best well-made movie on this list. There's definitely some nostalgia. There's some franchise vote for what this does. But there's an argument to be made that Friday the 13th is the greatest horror franchise of all time. Okay. I'm not saying that it is, but there's argument can be made for that. And this, unlike Halloween, frankly, which I love Halloween. I adore Halloween so much. To me, this Friday the 13th is more of the template of a lot of slashers, in the sense that they're being picked off one by one. That's not what really happens in Halloween. There's just a couple kills really in Halloween.
Yeah.
And also in Friday the 13th, you don't know who the killer is. It's a mystery throughout until the reveal at the end. And with Scream being my favorite horror movie of all time, Scream owes a lot to this movie.
Happy birthday, Nev Campbell.
That's right. Nev Campbell, happy birthday.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. I think it is one of the most important movies ever made, especially if you're a fan of the horror genre. But I honestly think Shining is one of the most important horror movies ever made as well. I won't say that about any of the others, but I think those two are probably the most significant and important. Friday the 13th is just such an interesting journey, what it started off and where it ended. You know what I mean? Like what a wild adventure that is. But I respect that. And I think for me, my number 1 is The Changeling. I watched The Changeling very young, and I think it was very formative in my mind about the tone, the type of ghost story it was. Like, I don't think I had ever seen anything like it at that point. And now, there's tons of other movies. Stir of Echoes, I really like a lot, and it has kind of a similar idea to it, a similar kernel there. But the mystery aspect, I watch Murder, She Wrote all the fucking time. And The Changeling operates as a detective ghost story because you're trying to figure out what happened. And I think that's interesting. That's cool. There's something noir about it. And so I like that. And George C. Scott is just fantastic in this movie. And I think the special effects, I think the score, everything just lends it to be my personal favorite.
And we even talked about it on the proper podcast of The Changeling, how a lot of these ghost tropes, to me, it seems like it comes from The Changeling. Like they get a lot of stuff from The Changeling, future movies.
And I think a lot like something like Robert Wise's The Haunting. It's one of those that's often not spoken about unless you're like really an aficionado and are looking for those pinnacle movies that bring horror to. Like, I think it does a lot of the same things The Shining does, but The Shining gets more spectacle because it is more of a main event, right? Whereas The Changeling is a nice little sleeper hit that doesn't have the beautiful vision, but it's still competently made in every way. That's 8 movies out of 1980. Some of them rough. Jesus Christ.
I think it's going to be the same for 1981, which we're moving into. There'll be, I've already looked. I see what's coming up. There's definitely some bangers in here.
Okay.
There's at least one I haven't seen, so I don't know about that. And there's some that might be some stinkers, but we'll tackle them together.
This is probably the time that Rob started making movies, so that makes sense. What is our first viewing for 1981?
The first one from 1981 is the David Cronenberg classic, Scanners.
I have never seen Scanners.
Really?
So I am stoked. I'm stoked for some body horror. It's going to be awesome.
I will say that, again, based on my limited memory of this, there is some body horror, but it's not like body horror that you really come to see with Cronenberg. It's not like The Fly. Did Cronenberg do The Brood? Because that's super duper body horror as far as that goes. And not to mention like his latest stuff. Scanners has some crazy stuff, but to me, Scanners is more, we'll get into it. To me, it's almost like more sci-fi.
That's what I always sort of like when you said David Cronenberg. I'm like, The Fly? I thought that was later, but yes, because I just associate Scanners as being science fiction mostly, but I guess The Fly is too. And I guess sci-fi and horror, they have hand in hand incestuous relationship, definitely.
Problematic age difference, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited about it. Plus, David Cronenberg, what a weird Canadian he is, because he is all of those I'm sorry things, but then he just makes a person grow a 9th penis out of their back in a movie. So that's I'm excited. So until then, Chad, where can the people find you?
You can find me on Twitter. The podcast is NQC.
I'm sorry, podcast. It's X now, please. Thank you.
Yeah. What Keith said, NQC podcast on Twitter /X and Instagram.
Awesome. And then you can find me in the Not Quite Darkness.
Peace.
Michael Kite.